we have some folks coming on in.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello. How are we doing today? Woohoo! It's Thursday.
It's Thursday. I'm
But
moderate.
Thursday means Virtuous Insider Day. Woo
Woo!
Awesome. Ooh, we got a good crowd.
Great to see
Who's in
everybody.
here? Stacy, your Thursday staple.
Hey.
All right, we'll give everybody just a minute to pop on in, and then we'll go ahead and get started for the day. But Megan was just telling me before we turned the webinar on, there's a graduation going on at the high school near her, and so she's been hearing pomp and circumstance all day.
Congratulations to all the graduates of my neighborhood.
I love it. I love it. Megan's been hearing pomp and circumstance, and I've been hearing I have a stray dog in my living room today because I'm a crazy dog lady. And so I've been hearing just those little tiny little chomps on like toys and squeaky toys and things. And so I think I'd prefer that over pomp and circumstance, but it's a bigger accomplishment. All right, well, I'll go ahead and share my screen. We'll get ready to get going for the day. Can everybody see the Virtuous Insider kind of home screen, if you will? Awesome. Cool. Let me pull up our chat. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. It's another Thursday of the Virtuous Insider. Today, Megan and I are back for the Megan and Stephanie show. We're going to be talking about a client spotlight. And we're going to take a look at kind of some of the things that they have done with their fundraising efforts, and then kind of flip the switch and take a look at what all of that means inside Virtuous proper. And then we'll have a few minutes at the end for some questions if you guys have anything. But you guys know the drill at this point. Toss something into the chat if you have a question or a thought about something. But we'll just kind of jump right on in. And I'll pass it over to Megan to get us started.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, so today we're looking at Made to Flourish, which is, but first we'll remind you.
Oh, yes.
that this happens every Thursday. It's a different show every week with new and exciting things like product insights, client success stories, responsive strategies, and training. So we hope you'll join us every week for a new show.
Yes. And next week, we're going to be doing a full hour of training. I know today's just a little 30-minute kind of snippet, but next week is going to be a full hour of training on kind of some of the aspects of gifts and receipts and gift entry and kind of all of the fun part of fundraising. It's called the fun part of fundraising.
That sounds great.
Okay, sorry, back to you.
All right, so back to Made to Flourish. Made to Flourish is an organization that examines and supports the role of faith and work, and they support pastors in the field and help them flourish in their roles and help their communities flourish. So they adopted Virtuous. They switched from Salesforce and have found it to be a really great relational aid, and their annual campaign did, they say, at least double in the last 2 years because of using Virtuous to send and segment emails. So using that automation and marketing to really get specific. And they use like 4 buckets, they say, of different categories of people within their base to communicate directly with. And it seems like it's really working for them. Next slide, please. So this was not always the case when they were using that other system. One of the big things was that they were talking about in their case study, which I'll drop in the chat in a minute, is they really felt like they needed a system that was specifically designed for nonprofits from the get-go, because nonprofits and sales absolutely have some overlap, but they're not the same. Fundraising and a sales process are not the same thing. So if you're using what are essentially sales tools that have been tweaked a little bit versus nonprofit tools that are made for nonprofits, you're going to have a different experience, was basically what they found. They didn't like not being able to segment or automate. And we can see that like from their doubled annual campaign, that made a big difference.
Yeah.
Their CRM couldn't be used by their entire team, which was a big problem. They have fundraisers regionally across the US, and then they also have group leaders who manage communities in different cities, and they weren't able to use the CRM at all. They were using spreadsheets to try to keep track of their various contacts. And they couldn't manage their CRM independently. They needed a consultant for even minor changes. I know some of you have been in similar situations, so let's look and see how it changed when they switched to Virtuous. With Virtuous, they're able to unify their team and use different roles to do things so that like fundraisers can look at their fundraising information, group leaders can manage their contacts and communications without looking at fundraising information necessarily, and they can segment and automate their communication. But the big things that we're going to talk about today are nonprofit specific features that help growth, specifically the major gift ask pipeline and custom reports. I'm interested to know, quick poll that isn't even a poll, how many of you are using one of those features, custom reports or major gift ask pipeline? Anybody? It's okay if the answer is no. We're not going to be like hurt.
Well, it's interesting, and I know we're going to look at Virtuous in a few minutes, but Megan, you mentioned it, kind of the struggle sometimes of the overlap between just traditional sales and nonprofit fundraising. Yes, they're both kind of heading in the same direction. There's a lot of kind of similarities. Some of the bones are the same, the big kind of structure is the same, but the way it all happens is not the same. But I do think something like the gift ask pipeline, where you are tracking what's out there, what's expected to be fulfilled, kind of what are the probabilities and things like that. That's one of those pieces that really, really overlaps and is kind of interesting, because I would make an assumption that there are plenty of folks that aren't doing that and aren't able to track their asks as expected revenue down the road. And that's a really easy way to kind of keep your forecasting and stuff clear. I joke because my husband's an accountant. He's a financial analyst. So he runs forecasts all day, every day. And so the idea that you might have money out there that you're not forecasting to be able to run operations and, plan programming and things like that is, it's a missed opportunity for sure, I think.
I think there's also, sometimes even some missed peace of mind of looking and being able to really see, like, even if something is not happening this minute, there are things coming down the road because of the work we've done back here, and having visibility into all of that can be helpful, I think.
Yeah. Well, and fundraising is such a interesting kind of beast, if you will, because yes, you're putting in so much effort in cultivating those relationships for something to come later. I would, hesitate to say that every meeting anyone has is, with a major donor or a prospect is, let us tell you this great story. Let us share our experience. Let us, include you in our conversation, in our community. And then someone writes a check right then and there. Amazing if that happens. But being able to take a look ahead and kind of peer into the future just a little bit, even if it's a fuzzy future, really allows you to kind of set some things in motion that you wouldn't be able to if you kind of weren't tracking that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and absolutely better for keeping it once you have more than one fundraiser who might be interacting in those relationships, having visibility for everybody to say like, oh, this happened. This, like, someone already had coffee with this person. And so when I see them at an event next week, I should have that in the back of my mind. That this is an ongoing relationship with multiple people in it can be very helpful too. So yeah, what Made to Flourish found that I thought was really interesting was they they were able to adapt their major gift process into the pipeline pretty specifically. And the other thing was with custom reports, they had reports they liked. They had particularly one report that was an Excel spreadsheet that their VP of philanthropy was very attached to and liked a lot. And they were able to replicate that with custom reports into Virtuous. So then they could have all of the data in one place, which you all know is a thing that we like a lot, is having all of your data where you can get it and everyone can get it. And then Rebecca, the development director there, said something really interesting that I think is a good reminder to all of us, which, and you can read the slide, but she said that it's not just you pick a CRM and it does everything and then you never touch it again. You do still need someone paying attention to your data and loving it and being strategic with it. But what she found is that Virtuous allows that person to be anyone on your team, even without IT background or coding skills, so that you can kind of deputize anybody to be your person who is your database person, which I thought was an interesting point of view and would be interested to see if other people have found that as well.
Well, one thing I know, just kind of, sorry, I'm jumping in all over the place today, but just on kind of deputizing people, it's interesting because the structure of how I've seen programs work in the past is, people just kind of shove data in there. Whereas some of you, I'm sure, will have experienced during the gift entry process, you're constantly doing cleanup, you're constantly matching, and you're constantly creating new when appropriate throughout those processes. And so hopefully that's something that's helpful. You're kind of putting the work in as you go, as opposed to having to do a major spring cleaning every year. And so that makes it very interesting as well, because a lot of systems are set up to have one database admin that is doing that dreaded spring cleanup kind of a thing. So it's cool that it's really flipping the switch and giving kind of some of the reins and some of the control to the whole team. So
yeah, and taking away some of those tasks, like the massive spring clean, which I don't think anyone will be sad to see go. I mean, maybe there's someone here who's like, I'm just sad that I'm not deduping all the time. I wish I could
talk to that person.
More and more of my vendors and owners.
If that's you, let me share some tips and tricks.
So these custom reports and this major gift pipeline, those are, I think, like the two features to really take a look at. And I see some people are using custom reports, and then some people are just like, it's just on the radar. As always, if you have a great story about using Virtuous, I'd love to hear it, and you can email it to me. Again, I say this every time, it doesn't have to be a dramatic story of like, we raised $0 and then we got Virtuous and we raised $1 million bazillion and our lives were drastically, hugely improved and everything is better. I mean, we'd love to hear that story too.
Sure.
But even if it's just like, I used to spend a lot of time doing this and then I figured out that I could change my process in Virtuous and I saved myself some time, people would love to know that and we'd love to share it.
When I find kind of one of the fun things when I get to work with clients and do client trainings is that there are so many times where they're like, oh my God, thank goodness, I do that manually every day right now. And it's just a simple little thing. So just a small plug for if anybody wants to kind of share their story or their fun little fact. But sorry, Megan, any other kind of thoughts on Made to Flourish? I'm like chomping at the bit to get into Virtuous today.
Oh yeah, let's get into Virtuous. And I'll drop that case study link for if anyone wants to see all the results that Made to Flourish has been having or learn more about them. But yeah, let's go into Virtuous.
All right, I've got my trusty dusty dashboard here. One of the things I really wanted to kind of start with was custom reports. So I actually pulled a custom report and then popped it into my dashboard as a widget. So we have all of the standard widgets that I know you guys are all using and you've seen before, but we have the ability to do a custom report as a widget as well. So it's one of those things where, I mean, I kind of gloss over it because there's so many kind of goodies down here that are just preset, but being able to include the kind of graph data points from a custom report onto your dashboard changes the game a little bit. So the sponsorship gift fulfillment, it's got two little kind of pieces of the donut, if you will, of the pie. And for this one, I have a count and a total, and I want to jump into the report and kind of look at how that all kind of bubbles up into what we're seeing here. So I'm actually going to pop over to reports. And remember, you can always utilize our standard reports, or if you want to go in and see any custom reports that you've created, this report page here. Now, one thing I do want to just kind of briefly touch on, only because it was in our last release. So it's something that's so new that you just might not have gotten to yet. But you can actually schedule and send custom reports now. So Chef's kiss. Everybody loves it. It's awesome. You've been asking. We hear you. It exists now. So when you have a custom created report on the top left of your reports page, you can actually choose a scheduled report, or excuse me, choose to create a scheduled report, pick the report that you'd like, when is it going to be sent, the date and the time for the first send. And so here, let's do our sponsorship gift fulfillment, which we're going to look at in a minute. And perhaps I want this to be sent midway of every month. Noon o'clock on the dot looks perfect to me. And then we can choose this being sent daily, monthly, weekly, you name it. But this is going to be the first occurrence of the send. So let's send this monthly. And then you can choose within the users in your database who it's going to go to. So I just want to send it to myself. I want just that kind of pop-up email reminder for me. And then once you've created that custom report schedule, the schedule is going to live over here, let you know when it's next going to run. And then after it runs on the 15th, it'll swap to the next kind of cadence of what I'd set of monthly on the 15th. So just fun because it's brand new and shiny, but scheduling custom reports. So I want to pause that and actually go into the report to take a peek at it. So I've created this report. I want to take a look at the edit of the report itself so we can look at kind of the nuts and bolts of it. So for this one, I want to look at sponsorship gift fulfillment. So for our team, we're tracking, some major gift asks in the form of sponsorship. So we're giving people the opportunity to sponsor things. And this report is going to show us kind of the fulfillment piece of it. And this is actually something very similar to what Made to Flourish is doing as far as structuring kind of how they're tracking some of those asks. So they inspired this report. So we've chosen the pie chart here. Heading up to the grouping of fields, I'm going to look and see what fields do I want to group all of the data by. So the x-axis, this kind of bottom bit here. So I want to know by status. I want to see the status is kind of chunked together. And then as far as the y-axis, the kind of up and down part of the graph, I want to know the ask amount. I want to know kind of the status of where they're at, but I want to be able to track and see the amount that we asked. And then I want to do a little bit of math, and reports in Virtuous can have the ability to do a little bit of that kind of math and synthesizing of data, if you will. So I want to know the count, so how many asks are out there, and the total on the ask that's out there. So I want to look at choosing fields, and so for this one, in the details of the report, the kind of body of the report that's really just all of the raw data, I want to know the amount of the asks, the status, when they're expected to be fulfilled, what they're for, and who they're from. And then the last thing here is I specifically want to know just this year. I just want to look this year and see for all of the asks that are associated with a project that contains the word sponsorship. So I haven't picked any specific projects. I haven't said only this one. I've said all of the ones where we use a naming structure that includes the word sponsorship, but I really just want to know the asks from this year onward. So just a little bit of filtering in there. You can absolutely kind of nail that down a little bit farther if you wanted to create a saved query as well. But I want to just take a peek. Oops, I clicked save not open. So this report here is taking a look at grouping by status. So for over here on the right, I've got stewardship, closed, won, declined, unspecified, and fulfilled. So that's that group, that x-axis we talked about. And then the y-axis, granted this is a pie chart, so there's not an actual y-axis, but it's the amount in between or in the pie itself. That's going to be the totals and the average, or excuse me, and the count. So this little inside kind of pie are the totals. So I have $61,000 in unspecified funds, 8,500 in fulfilled asks, stewardship 99, etc. Now this outside ring of the pie, because I selected two things I wanted to count, I had the actual count of the, the total of the asks themselves. This outside ring is the actual count of the asks. So I have 100 unspecified asks. I have 4 declined asks, 8 closed and 1 asks, 16 stewardship, and 27 fulfilled. So it's taking what we would normally consider the X and the Y axis of a report and putting them into kind of 2, almost like a donut and a little donut hole inside of the kind of data that we're looking at. Now the report results, it's hard to say, at the bottom is that raw data. So these are those fields I selected where I want to know the amount, the status, the project, the fulfill date, the project name, and the contact name. So I'm choosing what these columns are for our custom report, but it's all bubbling up based on the filter criteria that I had put in, where I just want this year's asks, and I just want the ones that are associated with our sponsorship projects. So this is just a quick peek at a version of a custom report. Obviously, when creating a custom report, the opportunities are practically endless, especially now that we have the ability to kind of create and schedule those custom reports to go out to folks that, perhaps your executive director isn't in Virtuous every day like you are, but you still want to put the same data and the same graphs and things in front of them so they start familiarizing themselves. So I want to just pause there really quick. Custom reports are really cool. I think especially on the asks where you can specifically talk about asks for a certain project or purpose, really kind of segmenting those out, I think is pretty nifty. But I want to pause really quick before we pop over to the gift ask pipeline and just check in. And how's everybody doing? Does everybody have any questions on custom reports or anything so far? You can always toss them in the chat. We'll grab them at the end if we have a few extra minutes. But I want to pop on over to the gift ask pipe. Oops, to the gift ask pipe.
In the Q&A box too, Stephanie.
Oh, you guys, we're not even going to get to gift ask pipeline. Oh, I love it. Being able to click on the dashboard widget to go into the report or engagement plans. So these are some great kind of product questions. I love those. And then creating a custom report for tracking email open rates. Ooh, that's a really good one. And Michelle, I would actually recommend popping over into the marketing side of things, because there's certain things that you can build custom reports on, but certain things we kind of already have baked into Virtuous. So if you're looking on the Virtuous marketing side of things, you can actually do a little bit of not reporting necessarily, but we have the ability to look at open rates and click-through rates and things like that just on the Virtuous marketing side of things. So these are great questions, you guys.
And then Ruth was wondering, can you use an embedded query with your custom report so that you could say segment gifts by constituent type?
Ooh, that's a great question. So you can use nested queries as your, let me pop into the edit portion here. So in this filter data portion, you would just swap over to using a saved query. And so from that, you would just choose whatever that kind of end query is that you want to be the criteria. So especially if you're dealing with a nested query, making sure that you're using that end kind of the biggest nesting egg, if you will, of the queries to pop in there. Filters are just an easy way to kind of pop in a few things, but you can absolutely do that. Great questions, you guys. Okay, I'm going to pop on over to gift ask pipeline because we only have a few more minutes. 30 minutes goes so fast. Oh my goodness.
It really does.
So in our gift ask pipeline, kind of that Kanban style view of things, where we're really taking a look kind of based on status. So you can absolutely kind of set some filter criteria right in here. I just want to kind of take a look at the overall structure of this page with you guys today, but you can specify, I just want to see my asks, or I just want to see the asks associated, like we just talked with sponsorship projects, things like that. But this is going to take us through looking based on the status of the ask. So discovery, early cultivation, ready to solicit, onward. Now you'll notice that we didn't see all of these statuses when we were looking at our custom report. But that just had to do with the filter criteria that I had put in there. Because those were all relatively new ones and all associated with a project for sponsorship, not all of these are using the same criteria. So these are all of the asks in our system, not just those specific to sponsorship, excuse me. So that's why there's some that we didn't see these statuses, because these aren't necessarily asks associated with sponsorship projects. So within each kind of column of the gift ask pipeline, we have this percentage probability to close up here. Now, this is taking in a few different pieces. So it's going to let us know the expected amount, the total amount, and the probability we're using to fill that kind of expected amount. So Virtuous is doing a little bit of math for us to say that when something is in early cultivation, we give it about a 25% probability to close. Over on ready to solicit, that probability moves up to 50. And we are setting these probability amounts within the gift ask pipeline settings. There's a lot of customizing you can do here based on your interactions and your kind of experiences with your donors, and knowing kind of where in the process do people really start to bite, and do people really start to become invested and committed to the asks that are out there to them. The other piece that we have up here is a filter of the kind of pipeline, so we can look at things like overall goals. So I can set this, so I can look at actual kind of percentages of, rate towards goal, amount towards goal. So I've got, 565% towards my goal in my pipeline, which is awesome. But of those gifts that are forecasted to close, I've got 106%. So looks great on there. But I'm only 12% of my way of gifts that I've actually received. So it's just being able to structure all of the gifts in your pipeline based on that kind of preset goal that you have, either for your calendar, your fiscal year, what have you. You can also utilize and swap out, just specifically look for certain team members. So if I just wanted to look at my gift asks versus Megan's, you could do that here. And then swapping out again, different criteria for being able to report based on this year, calendar, fiscal year, quarter, you name it. But there's a lot in the gift ask pipeline. Just in being able to see these probability pieces up here is kind of a game changer, I think, of being able to take that data out of your head and say, well, I know, Mr. Johnson is always good for the ask that I give him. His probability rate is really high, but it takes all year to cultivate that relationship, and boom. You have to know that to do that math kind of ahead of time. And so this really structures it out to say, okay, what do we know about our donors? What do we know about the way that we ask for major gifts and the way that they respond to those major gifts? Let's build those probabilities in to the pipeline so we can have an accurate look at the future, an accurate forecast ahead of us. That's as fast as I can talk, folks. And I feel like we didn't even touch on a lot in the gift ask pipeline, but I know we're almost at time. So I wanted to just take a moment and just kind of pop in through the chat and just kind of see what everybody's doing. Oh, the percentage is set to 0. Override them manually. Let's look, Celia. Ooh, I would reach out to our support team. I'm not sure exactly what might be happening on that with your overriding of percentages, but that could have something to do with your user settings. So if you reach out to our support team, we can take a look at that with you and kind of troubleshoot what might be going on there. I feel like that's all that I saw as far as new questions from when we kind of popped on in. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, like I said, I know we're just about at time, and I talked as fast as my little mouth could take me today.
30 minutes just goes so quickly. It really, really does.
Well, and for something like the gift ask pipeline that is so packed full of customizable kind of features or ways to utilize it or look at things within it, 30 minutes is not even enough time.
We'll have to give it its own full session sometime.
We will. But I want to keep us honest on our time for today and kind of wrap it up. And I know next week we're going to be doing a 1-hour training session, like I mentioned, on an aspect of the gift processing kind of gift process, excuse me, gift entry process is what I'm trying to say. But join me and Scott, our Director of Training and Education. We're going to be talking all things gifts. And then I know Megan has a client set up and ready to roll for us this time next month. So we'll be back then. Yes. And we would love for you guys to be the client on the call with us and chatting with us and kind of sharing your story. Again, nothing earth shattering, nothing life changing, just something that's saved you a few minutes here, a few minutes there, a tip or a trick, something that you've experienced that you'd like to share with your colleagues and your fundraising community. So let us know. But we're glad you joined us today. Grateful for you taking the time. And Megan, as always, I love the Megan and Stephanie show. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day, you guys.
Bye.